with Abe Baldonado.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Chili Wire. We are on episode 11, and this week I'm excited to introduce my guests, Don and Damara Andrade. These two individuals have been advocates in Albuquerque public schools, protecting children and families from explicit materials. Don and Damara, thank you very much for joining the Chili Wire this week. How are you?
Thank you for having us. We're good.
Of course. And so, y'all, just a few episodes ago, we had a concerned parent that brought to our attention some of the explicit books that were circulating in our public libraries here in Albuquerque. But you all have done a lot of great work in Albuquerque public schools to identify some explicit books that are happening there. But before we kick off and we dive into some of the materials you all have found and some of the work that you've done, I just love to open up an opportunity for you all to introduce yourselves and just share a little bit more about who you are and, you know, how we got here.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you kick it off?
All right. We have a ministry. We're called the Hitched Apologists because we're married, hitched. And apologetics is just essentially a word, you know, to describe, we defend the Christian faith by providing good evidence. And we, like you said, we got involved in creating a guide for parents, 125 plus sexually explicit books. We did that last year when Pastor John Amanchuku came to the school board. He spoke out against the sexually explicit books. And we're like, well, what is all the ruckus? Because there was a lot of ruckus when he came. And sure enough, we looked up and there was hundreds of explicit books within the Albuquerque public school systems.
Yeah, and as she said, that moment when we decided to tune in and see the broadcast live on YouTube at the school board meeting, we saw the kind of pushback that John was getting, and we decided, hey, we need to look into this ourselves because this is very interesting. This is something that we've never really decided to even invest any time into looking at. And when we finally started digging in and just seeing, wow, here's another one and another one, and just having our jaws drop about, wow, how is this available? And to schools all the way down to elementary school. And it just continued until we got more than 125 as the title of the guide goes.
Wow, that's shocking to me.
Yeah.
But also, I'm glad that you all got involved because I think there's a lot of parents and guardians that just are unaware. You know, I know we've spoke previously that, you know, they're busy and that their assumption is that schools are doing good by their children and that, you know, they're being provided high quality educational materials. But some of what you found, we could say aren't really educational, I would say.
No, far from it. And, you know, it's like you said, I think a lot of parents kind of treat schools like a daycare system. They drop their kids off, but they don't get in the habit of really opening up their backpack to see what their kids are reading and what they're consuming. And this stuff isn't educational. You know, this is essentially porn. That's what it is. It has, you know, graphic descriptions in the, you know, in its novels. It has pictures of sexual acts between adults, between kids. This stuff is very harmful. When consumed for an adults, let alone kids.
Yeah, it's not your Romeo and Juliet, your Odyssey, Canterbury Tales, some of the things of literature that you learn when you're in high school or whatever it may be. But, you know, this is not that. And so what inspired you all to create this book? And I would love for you all to just show our viewers just a glimpse of the guide that you put together for families.
Yeah, so this is the guide that we have right here. And this guide is actually available on our website. If you go to the hitchedapologist.com, scroll to the bottom, there's a free PDF that you can download, as well as you can email us on the contact form and we can get you a physical copy, because sometimes it's just having it in your hands and being able to present it to the people around you is just that much more impactful. But the guide is very user friendly. So in the front of it, we have schools by district and which books are in those schools. And it's all in a columned outline. And you can see which ones have actually been checked out, which ones have never been returned. And we have it all broken down for parents to see. And then as you get through, there are samples of every book that we found. And you can just check that all out and share it with everybody, because it's pretty wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And just this is a terrific guide that you all have put together. And I'm assuming you all have done a lot of collaboration with others to make this happen. And can you all share a little bit on just some of the collaborators that you've been able to work with?
Absolutely. So when we first started this book guide, like I said, it got me interested when John Amanchuku came here. That's kind of what inspired us to get this whole thing started. So I started working on the book list in Albuquerque, and then I ended up reaching out to Sarah Smith, who's in Las Cruces. I believe her website is New Mexico Freedom Alliance.
Mhm.
And she was actually doing a book guide herself in Las Cruces. And she has like 95 plus sexually explicit books that she's found. And then we were able to work with somebody in Rio Rancho and help her put together a book guide too as well for Rio Rancho. And there's quite a bit of books over there as well. And currently, recently, actually, a few days ago, I'm working with someone putting a book together in Socorro.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And on top of that, just with getting the guides made, we had lots of people who poured into to kind of like outline things, to kind of also do some edits, make it look a little bit better. So there was a lot of, there was minor parts and
Mhm.
big parts too. And then helping with the distribution, we had printing companies that wanted to really help get this out. So they gave us discounts, and there are so many people involved with that. But it's just, and then even going as far as to when the last legislative session was in play.
Yeah.
And there were two bills that were going to be protecting these types of materials in the public schools, which was our aim. And then it was also protecting it in the public libraries.
Right. And that was, I believe, the Library Protection Act.
Yeah,
Yes.
HB 27, I
Yes.
believe, and SB 552.
Yeah, you remembered. That's good. Yeah, and we first learned about the public library one from Jody Hendricks from
Mhm.
New Mexico
Family
Family
Action
Action
Movement.
Movement,
Jody's a good friend of ours and
Yeah.
has been on in the
Yes.
Chili Wire before, and
Yeah, she's
has
great.
done tremendous work and has been an advocate to protect
Yeah.
children. So that's great. I mean, just, it's a sense of community here is what I'm getting, is that you
Yeah.
had a lot of folks help you out. And to hear that, like, printing and publishing companies
Yeah.
really want to help you all get this out, I think that's magnificent. You already hit on how it's been used. So, I mean, I'm assuming many of our legislators have even seen this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some that would maybe want to ignore it, but
That's
because
actually,
they don't want to believe, they would probably tell you this is nonsense. This
Right.
stuff isn't circulating
yeah,
in our
that,
public
that was
libraries.
something I was going to touch on as well, is that Vince Torres was a huge help when it
Yeah.
helped to getting these out to the legislators' hands. And we had Rebecca Dow and Crystal Brantley and Anthony Thornton. A lot of them got their hands on this. And at one point, they made, I think it was 200 or 300 copies of this and distributed it on the floor for those two bills. And it effectively, it silenced the bill. It killed the bill.
Yeah.
And Vince was telling me a few months after that, he's like, things kind of got changed up there in Santa Fe because it just didn't come from like a big conservative organization. It came
Right.
from two concerned parents from Albuquerque who decided to put this together and take the time to do it, which kind of shows like anybody can do it if you just take the time,
Yeah, absolutely. Andrea Cloak, who was on our podcast recently, she came on the podcast, spoke about what her friend encountered in the public library here in Albuquerque. She
Yeah.
sent a letter, her friend sent a letter to the library, and they actually took it off the pre-K shelf because it was called
Mm.
You Know Sex. It was a book that was very detailed for a preschooler, and they realized that there was a mistake. I mean, they moved it, of course, to another section, but they at least took it out of the preschool section, which, is a good thing because, I mean, I couldn't imagine a preschooler being exposed to that and having to
Yeah.
have a conversation with your pre-K age child
Exactly.
about some of the things that were in that book.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up because we were actually at our public library a few months ago and we ran into a book called Let's Talk About Abortion in the kids section, as well as a book called This Book is Gay, which we have here. This was in the kids section as well.
And there's a sample in there if you want to
Yeah, let me open it up. So
show it.
graphic stuff here, but this was
Wow.
in the kids section for any kid to pick up. And, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where, again, parents are so trusting of their kids. They let them go. They go in the library and it's like, this is what they have available to them.
Well, and I think it's disappointing that there's folks that defend this because we've seen a lot of that is
Yeah.
that they downplay this, that it's harmless, it's okay,
Yep.
children need to learn about it. And it's like, no, in our school libraries, children need to learn skills that they need necessary to be successful in their careers, whether it's math, science, history, whatever it may be. But when I see some of this stuff, it's indoctrination and some fragile minds, especially your younger students who haven't fully developed,
Yeah.
they start asking questions. I think most recently we were talking pre-show that, Snoop Dogg recently came out and said, we went to watch a movie and I can't even have a nice movie night with my grandchild because now they're asking me questions at a very young age that I don't know how to explain.
Right. And I think it's interesting too, because a lot of the pushback that we get and we've heard, a lot of people will say, well, you're just book banners. Well, this material, kids need to see themselves in this material or else they're going to get depressed, higher risk of suicide and just so many excuses. But, the ironic part in that is when we get called book banners, what I find so funny is you go into a store and they have a section called banned books, but the books are there. I'm like, well, they can't really be banned, can they? Because the books are in the store ready to buy. We're not at Barnes and Noble. We're not at Amazon. We're not protesting any of that. We're talking about, first of all, our tax dollars going to an educational system that should be about education.
Exactly.
But yet they have access to these sexually explicit books without their parents there.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head on that. I mean, it's fascinating because I'm sure there's going to be people watching that are going to say, these guys are exaggerating. It's not that bad. And not once have I ever heard you all say you wanted to ban books. You're just saying we shouldn't expose these books to children at this age. If, their parents want to show them to them later on, whatever, that's a parent's choice, right? I think we're talking about parental choice, parental freedom here. But for strangers to be having these conversations with our children, or, I even think about students who may pick up this book, have a lot of questions. Parents aren't around, you're not around. Who do they have a conversation with? A complete stranger. And that's a potential risk that we see.
Yeah, exactly. And that's interesting because we were at an event a few months ago with New Mexico Family Action Movement. And this girl came up to us and she's like, I'm glad that you guys are doing this because years ago, I actually got exposed to sexually explicit content in school. I opened up the book and that image will forever be in my mind. I'm like, that's the reason why we're doing what we're doing, because these kids are affected, by what they consume.
Yeah. And I mean, they're not fully developed mentally yet to, really understand what they were shown, right? I mean, it takes years. I mean, even high schoolers, I think about my time as a high schooler and I thought I knew it all, but I was pretty naive. And even in my early 20s, right? It takes a long time for just as individuals and to grow as humans and to develop our mindset. And so I think you're right. But Damara, when we were chatting earlier, you brought up some great just background on the dangers that exist when kids are exposed to this and some of the statistics that you've had. I'd love for you to elaborate on that.
Yeah. So I actually brought this paper because it's a lot. So there's one study that was done by the National Library of Medicine. So it says a 17-year study of children beginning when the children were in 7th grade or 9th grade found that exposure to sexually explicit media, including books and graphic novels, is associated with unsafe sex, multiple sexual partners, and early sexual debut. Other studies that were done found that it could lead to dating violence and sexual violence. This was done by the European Journal of Developmental Psychology. And then in 2021, in Journal of Sex and Martial Therapy, found that pornography consumption is associated with both animalistic and mechanistic dehumanization, which predicts sexually aggressive attitudes and behaviors. And I found this certain quote very fascinating. So it says, men who use more pornography are more likely to see women as closed-minded, impassive, cold, or mechanical, much like instruments or robots. They are also more likely to see women as uncivilized, irrational, unsophisticated, or lacking self-constraint, like animals or beasts. The two types of dehumanization combine to provide male pornography viewers with a specific sexual script in which women either are denied their full agency and human nature or only have agency only within the narrow role of wild sexual creatures that lacks characteristics of human uniqueness. So that's very concerning, especially young boys who are consuming this stuff or have access to this kind of thing. They're going to grow. Again, it's an unrealistic outlook on sex. And when they pick up these books and when they read the material that's in there, when they see the material that's in there, this is the kind of stuff that it can cause. This was a study done on adults, let alone kids.
Right.
So I can't even imagine, we live in a culture where kids are like so depressed and like lacking identity. This is the last thing I think that they need.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think we're seeing some of the effects right now with our youth from those studies that you've showed. I mean, we see domestic violence is always on the rise. Sexual abuse is on the rise. I mean, it's something that I think can be attributed to what we're seeing here with a lot of these sexually exploitive books. And so, it's just shocking to me that we even have to have these conversations. And there was actually a bill, and I'm sure you know about this, but there was a bill that was introduced by Representative John Block to protect children from harmful material, and the legislature refused, just completely refused to do anything about it. I'm like, this is common sense. Like, why wouldn't you want to protect children under the age of 18 from these exploitative books and just materials that are out there? Like, why wouldn't you just want to do that? And it's just shocking to me that they just think, no, it's fine, it's normal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to something that I had thought about a while back, was that they have safety precautions for children inside the computer labs, or they go to the library, they can't access certain sites. It blocks them from going to certain sites, but then they have the same content on the shelf. They could just take off and go home with it.
Off the shelf and take it off the shelf.
It's like it's so inconsistent in the logic there. And it's just, to me, it just makes no sense. And then the same thing when it goes to you trying to approach the school boards and talking about this. It's almost like it's hard to get through to them too, because you recently had that event where one school board member was talking about the other one. They caught her with that. And it's like, there was an outrage, right? Like, people are like, wow, she's using unethical language. How dare she use
that language?
And it's like, look at the language you're having in the books for the kids, but you want to put these standards on adults and how they're supposed to operate ethically with each other, but let the kids just go whatever, do what they want with this stuff.
Yeah.
So
no, you're exactly right. And that board member was not punished or censured at all. And so we've ultimately said, it's okay. This behavior is okay to do. And now you've set a precedent for others to be like, well, I can call someone that word. I can talk about people like this. And it's like, no, we need to hold people to a higher standard. There needs to be a level of professionalism. And it's not normal to talk that way about others. So just curious, how has the feedback been from the school board? I know you all have been pretty active speaking with the school board, and you've mobilized others to also start getting involved as well. What has been the response from school board members?
Yeah. So usually when we go to the school board, it's usually a one-way conversation. We have a mic and we get to talk to them. They don't talk to us. So we don't really hear their feedback, but we can see other people within the school board meeting, and they usually either get annoyed of what we're doing or, we have some teachers come up to us who are actually concerned. So it's kind of like a mixture of both. But beyond that, I mean, like DJ was talking earlier about this, but, the last time we went to the school board and we had a teen come with us and he read out of the book, and, the guy in the background was kind of like motioning like this, like, should we cut it off? Like, what should we do? So, it makes people uncomfortable, as it should, because this stuff needs to be talked about.
Well, and you just said something that I really caught, is that there's even teachers that are concerned about what's circulating in our public schools. And I think that's very telling. Now, it's not unusual for most school boards usually don't engage with the public. So folks, that's don't get ahead of yourself and be like, how dare they not engage? They usually don't. But I'm just curious, have they been open to speak off, the record and like out of a board meeting, just as, leaders that, are elected to have conversations with their constituents? Just curious if you all have had conversations just off, outside of a board meeting where they followed up and just have been like, hey, we hear your concerns.
Yeah. So we haven't talked to them individually outside of the school board. We usually have just been going to the school board so far, but others have. Yeah. And there's maybe like 2 on the school board that I'm aware of that are willing to talk about this situation, because we actually know somebody right now. Her name is Mike Peterson. She's working on a policy at APS currently and trying to bring change within that. And it's based off ratings like PG 13, rated R. So she's trying to bring that into play. And I think only a few school board members right now in Albuquerque have been willing and open to hear her out. Other than that, I'm not 100% sure. You know, it's kind of weird because sometimes people will say something and then like in the public they like say another.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to keep track of all of that. But yeah.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part about
Yeah.
politics and that
Mhm.
world is, you know, things are said one way and then said another way
Right.
in another situation. But I am hopeful. And if you all ever hear that there is momentum moving, would love for you to share that with us here at the Chili Wire to get out with our following and to just get more folks involved to say, hey, support this policy. And,
Yeah.
you know, we're in the middle of local elections right
Mhm.
now. So we're electing you school board members. So hopefully they'll take note and they'll listen and do what's right for the children that they serve and the families that they serve.
Definitely.
Exactly.
I want to give you all a moment to talk about some of the accomplishments that you all have had after creating this guide and then also what you hope to accomplish. I have no doubt that you all have even bigger goals.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so back to one of the big accomplishments was when those two bills were being put on the floor.
Yeah.
Just having two parents step up and do this and it being shared to everybody up in Santa Fe and then them saying, hey, we're not gonna bring this under the table and vote on it. We're just gonna let it die. That's a huge thing. Even us, we were like, well, we didn't know that was the impact it was gonna do. And it allowed parents to have the opportunity to still go and make complaints to schools individually or go to school board members and voice their opinion. And if the other things had gone through, I think it would have either effectively blocked that or made it very hard to continue to do that. And that was a huge victory. And then also just being able to get this content out to more people to make them more aware. That's been one of the biggest driving factors for us is just set up where we can, give these materials out, make it more known. Because again, as Damara said, people usually just tend to drop off their kids at the school. They don't really invest what's happening there. And so letting them know like this is what's happening and this is what's available and just bringing that awareness has always been huge. And again, like being able to work with different individuals from different organizations and them doing their part to help get this content pushed out or however they did it, even with Mike from Freedom Families United. He's starting to make that policy and try to put that in now that it's an election year and just trying to get something pushed there. You know, there's
make it a topic, make it a
something
conversation.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so right now we've been able to see a little bit more momentum going forward with people actually going to school board meetings, even if we're not there.
Yeah.
And they decided to go and talk to it, at least be that bug or in the ear or stone in the shoe, if you will.
Yeah.
And we had one particular lady who said, I went and took a class how to do public speaking so that I could
Wow.
effectively
She was a
go.
grandparent.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she's like, I want to be able to present this correctly in the proper way to them every time. And I was like, wow, if we had like 10 more grandparents like you who would come every week to the school board meeting and just do that,
Yeah.
it would make a difference, you know? And so we're starting to see that. And then, of course, seeing how the Albuquerque one is spread and then the Las Cruces, and then now we got one working towards Santa Fe. Socorro, one just came out in Rio Rancho. It's like spreading across New Mexico. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to have this just decentralized where people were able to pick it up and do it in their own city, do their research and fight for it in their city.
So just curious, do you all help folks that want to start it up like in another city or town or village? I'm guessing they reach out to you. So what does that look like? And I'm thinking like rural New Mexico. I think there's probably some folks out there that eventually, you know, I grew up in Las Vegas, New Mexico. They may say, hey, I maybe want to do an audit myself of what's circulating in Las Vegas City Public Schools or Raton, wherever it may be. But just curious what you all offer and what services you all provide to help them kickstart that up.
Yeah, so the biggest one is going through the school library online. I feel like that can be the biggest challenge. So I'll usually go on and I'll usually like create like a Word document and I'll do like a snippet of the screen and I'll like post like, okay, this is how you search for books. And then we also have a list of books to look out for. So I'll send them all of those resources. And then another one too, you know, getting involved in the school board meetings and talking to other people. I've created scripts too as well that I put on New Mexico Family Alliance with Sarah Smith on her website. So there's like 17 plus scripts that I've made. It comes at it from the scientific harmful effects. It comes at it from the religious perspective. It comes at it from the common sense perspective. Because at the end of the day, it's about common sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I don't even like calling it common anymore because it's not common. I like practical sense. But I mean, you know, again, parents just don't know, unfortunately, what's in the schools. That's been our reaction. So
Yeah.
if any way we can help other people get this together, we're there.
Well, and I think of the more vulnerable populations
Yeah.
and more the vulnerable parents and vulnerable children who, mom is single, dad is single, they work multiple jobs,
Yeah.
they don't have the time to either engage or get involved or just have the awareness, and then also those who are in and out of foster homes, are homeless, that they don't have support systems in place to have conversations about what they've just been exposed to in this book.
Absolutely. And another thing too is, this kind of material is often shown to sex trafficking victims. It's like what's happening with those kids that are in the schools? And they're picking up this stuff,
which is a very big problem in our state. And unfortunately, we're not talking about it enough. I think a lot is focused on, when we talk about border security and immigration, it's just like, oh, you want to deport people. No, it's much bigger than that. It's the crime. It's the human trafficking, the child exploitation that is actually happening in our communities. And while we're sleeping at night off I-40 and I-25, it's there and it's a reality and it's scary. And, I think, my wife and I just got married last year. When we have children, I'm worried. I'm concerned. I'm concerned to send them to school. I'm concerned about them being alone. It's just a very different time than when I grew up. And when I grew up, I lived in a small town and we used to be able to be out all day away from home. And, mom and dad didn't have to worry about, you getting kidnapped or anything. Like it was, you could go ride your bike all day. And as long as you were home before the light, sun was down and the lights came on, like you were fine. And, but that's not the world we live in today. I couldn't imagine leaving my kid outside all day and not watching them. And I think a lot of parents feel that way.
Oh yeah. Even our 10-year-old daughter, it's like, she used to go to a public school and I pulled her out of there. Like as soon as we walk through the halls and there's LGBTQ flags all over the place, I'm like, nope, I'm not doing this. So
yeah. Well, and that's just it. I've had family recently tell me that they're being exposed to those types of things in the classroom, that it's there, like it's, and I've had people say, no, it's not. I'm like, you think my family member would lie to me that that's what they saw on the teacher's, board or whatever they have set up? I'm like, they're not lying to me. But again, it's this, I don't know if people don't want to believe it or I don't know. What do you all think? Like, do they want to believe it? Do they not?
Yeah. I mean, to me, what that brings me back to is that, that stuff's going to be there because we know that people have an agenda. People they have beliefs, they have a worldview. Okay. And because of that worldview, it drives them to communicate information in a certain way. And when we have kids there, we have to realize that this information is going to be communicated either by you or by somebody else. And they're effectively taking you out of the equation and being the communicator to your children about these ideas. Now, what we do with our daughter is we expose our daughter to different worldviews, and we say, this is what they say about things, and this is what we as Christians believe as, and we give evidences for why we believe what we believe. And then we also go and say, this is why they believe what they believe. But you're not going to get that. You're going to get a side where it's like, this is the truth, and let me tell you why this is the truth, and it doesn't really matter what your parents think.
It's, teaching kids what to think rather than how to think, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And what you just explained, it's, you're enabling your child to be a free thinker, like educate them from all sides. And then as they grow, they'll make their own decisions. They'll have their own views and opinions, and that's healthy. That's good.
Right.
Like they'll be able to disseminate information and identify, what's real, what's fake, and today I remember my time in the classroom. I had students who didn't even know primary from secondary sources.
Yeah.
So when they're I'm not shocked that they're believing posts and fake news that they're seeing on social media and, just a lot of dangerous rhetoric. And they just, oh, that's so true. And I'm like, no, actually, that's not true. That's, people are being facetious and, it's...
Well, we live in a postmodern culture too, where, kids are being taught there's no such thing as objective truth. There's no such thing as objective morality. So, flowing from that, it makes sense why we're seeing so much of this evil out there, even within the school systems. And then another big factor is queer theory. We brought this book, Gender Queer. This is at Manzano High School, Valley High School, Early College Academy. And it has, again, there is no such thing as neutrality. This is the stuff that our kids are being exposed to. So these worldviews, postmodernism, queer theory, this is the biggest driving factor of kids being exposed to all of this.
I'm just shocked now at what I just saw when you opened that book.
Yeah.
Again, this is not education.
No.
Like, this is not education. And I have a deeper appreciation for what you all are doing right now to bring this awareness, because I really believe that most parents do not know that this stuff is circulating in their school libraries, and it's very dark stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That is shocking. So how do we get more parents involved? What are you all doing to get more parents involved with the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So, it's just spreading awareness, whether that's going through the school board, talking about it anywhere we can, like on this podcast, in everyday conversations that we might have with other people. We have pamphlets that we hand out, and then those people that we talk to, I tell them to talk to other people. Like, awareness is key. That's like the biggest key there. And then, of course, I think parents, getting this into the hands of parents, because we've spoken to a lot of them, and you're right, they don't know. The majority of parents we've come across, they're like, wow, I didn't know it was this bad.
Mm-hmm.
So we want more parents to go to the actual schools and start challenging these books, or at least getting them to be opted out of even being able to have access to these books.
Right. There should be parameters, right, of what a school librarian can order. And, I believe in free speech. Like, I am like the king of, I love free speech, but I also believe that we have to protect our youth. We have to protect children. We have to make sure that there are age appropriate texts in their schools, and also educational. But I also think there needs to be some parameters of what can be ordered and what can't be ordered. Like, how does it relate to a child's education? And, these, what I've seen so far, are not it. I can't even tie it into science, to anatomy, to biology. Like, I can't even say that there's a reasonable place for it to exist in our public schools.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's a difference between an anatomy book and this, like completely two different things. And just spreading that awareness is important.
Yeah, I would also expand on that and just say, the most powerful thing is getting this book into people's hands. And if you have it, sharing it with the others around you and letting them know. Because we were at the National Day of Prayer in Civic Plaza. We set up a table there and we were handing out these books. And I remember a gentleman came up and he spoke to me and he said that, there's much more bigger fish to fry than this. These kids are just going to be exposed to it at home. They have cell phones. They're going to access it how they want to. And I said, but how does that still change the fact that the schools are the ones doing the exposing?
Right.
Like, these are two different cases here. Like, that's their freedom and that's their parents who give them access to do that. Again, it comes down to their parents giving them the access.
Right.
This isn't the same thing. And we got into it for a little bit there, but then I ended up showing them this book on the table. And this one is Let's Talk About It. And this one's at West Mesa, Volcano Vista, and Rio Grande. But when I showed him what was in there, and this is like a more tamer picture of what's in here, because there's more like sexual content of actual like penetration and stuff going on. And he was like, well, I get what you're saying now.
Yeah.
So it's like they see it.
It takes seeing it to believe it. And,
Right.
That was during the last podcast that we did with Andrea Cloak, that was just it. There was some friends and family that, when I told them about the podcast we were doing, at face value was like, oh, it's not that bad. And then I'm like, here are the pictures.
Yeah.
And then that changed. It's like, oh yeah, that does not belong in a pre-K section in our public library.
Yep.
Right. Because parents are being told one thing, like, oh yeah, this is just educational, and they're just taking it at face value. But then when they see it, their whole attitude changes. And it's a bipartisan thing. You could be Democrat, you could be Republican, and still be against this stuff.
Again, and you make a good point, Damara. This is not political.
Yeah.
Like, it's not political. It's just common sense. It's just safety. It's just for the well-being of our future that we address this.
Yeah.
It's not political. This
Yeah.
isn't. This impacts Republicans as much as
Yeah.
it does Democrats or whatever you
Yeah.
want to call. Like it doesn't matter. Like this is not a political spectrum thing. Like this is.
Right.
These are children.
Right.
Like they're not. Children aren't Democrats or Republicans. I mean, even adults. I mean, we've come to a world now where it's like we identify people based on their political party, and that's not it. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to be known as like Abe's this or Abe's like. I just want to be known like, hey, that's Abe. Like
Right.
that's Abe, right? That's
Exactly.
Don. That's Damara.
Yeah.
You make a good point because it's the people that have been inviting us to actually share this stuff has been the Republican Party, but we'd be just as happy to go to a Democratic event and show this off if they wanted us there.
Yeah.
But we haven't got that invite yet, you know? And like, we don't want this to be something where it's like we're being driven by just this side. It's like, that's not what it's about. This is about common sense that every parent should be able to see in it. And a great example of that is at our printing company that made our copies of our books. One of the people that was seeing the pages get printed and they were binding it, he was highly against this. He got mad at the owner for doing it and he called him a book banner, all these different names. And he said, I can't believe you're part of this right wing, you know, conservative, whatever. And he said, why don't you just open the book and check it out? He did. And he's now on the side of common sense.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. Not once in this interview have said, we want to ban these books. We're just saying these books don't belong in our public school libraries.
Right.
That's not a book banner. A book banner, it's not like you're burning the books and you're saying these books don't belong at all.
Right.
Like, that's not what you're saying. But
Right, exactly.
I'm going to make a plea right now because some of my good friends and people that I love are Democrats. Listen to these guys. Like, have a conversation, reach out. I think you'll be impressed with the guide that they put together, but also very shocked and disappointed about some of the texts that we're seeing circulating. And I make that plea to my good friends who are Democrats that I know are reasonable, common sense people that there's a problem. We have stuff circulating that really shouldn't. And I know they'll agree with me. But I just make that plea is that I hope even our leadership, you know, whether it's the governor and the Democratic leadership, I hope that they open some doors for you all to just have a conversation, because I think once they see it, you know, they can't deny that this is not appropriate.
Exactly.
So, you know, we're getting close to time, but just want to open it up to, you know, what are your future goals and what's happening now and what are you looking forward to? I guarantee you the next 60-day session will see these bills make their way back to our roundhouse, and we'll have to be aware and prepared to mobilize folks to be like, whoa, let's slow this down.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, when the ugly bills rear their head again, I would love to see more cities in New Mexico having a book made. So that when that happens, we can have more, like a quantity, more people coming out and voicing their opinion and say, you know, it's not just Albuquerque and Las Cruces, it's all these other cities now, and they can present that and take that to the roundhouse.
Yeah, you have Gallup, you have Farmington, you have Hobbs, you have Lincoln County, you know, you just have different places that aren't, you know, tied politically or by urban rule. Like, I mean, this is just New Mexico. Like, people are concerned.
Yeah. And this is just what's happening in New Mexico. There's so many other states where there's people that we know that are fighting the same fight. You got Gary, what's his name again?
Oh man, I forgot his last name. He's in New York. He's a New York pastor, but he was actually successful at removing over 100 books from the school system. That's New York.
Yeah.
You know, the most democratic state out there. So it's possible, you know, again, awareness is key.
And it just shows that it's not political lines that this is an issue, right? It's like, oh, hey, we see, these books probably shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
And then I think is it California where we have the kitchen table activist?
Yeah, the
She's
kitchen table activist. That's a really good resource to go on. She has a website, and she also has a plethora of books in every state.
So there's people fighting all over the country.
Yeah, there's another one if y'all are ever interested in our viewers, Protecting Texas Children. That's another group that was founded, and it protects, you know, of course they advocate for protecting children from exploitation and sexual content. And so they've done a lot of great work in Texas, and they're continuing to do some stuff. They have an email chain as well that they have, but I was going to mention that to you all as well, that they're doing some great work if you're ever interested. And of course our viewers as well. Well, Don, Damara, I appreciate you all coming on the Chili Wire. Keep up the fantastic work, and just thank you for being advocates for children and for families across New Mexico.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate the invite, Abe.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, y'all, that's it for this week's Chili Wire. We look forward to seeing you next time.